Hey everyone, my name is Wedge. Rotation has happened and Kaladesh has been legal for less than a week now. This past weekend, the Star City Games Open in Indianapolis brought us a crazy new standard format, and we learned a lot about what we're going to be dealing with for the next few months. So this week, a couple of videos are going to be dedicated to bringing you the most interesting and successful deck techs from that event. If you want to know where new standard is going, we've got your answer right here. Hope you enjoyed the video, and if you do, remember to hit the like button. Helps out a lot. The Open brought a ton of new strategies and tweaks on existing strategies. When the dust cleared and the tournament was over, it was pretty obvious which deck performed the best. White-red vehicles. On the back of Team Card Hoarder, led by Chris Van Meter, 3 white-red vehicle decks top-8'd the event, and won the entire thing. So without further ado, let's take a look at what we're dealing with. We'll begin with the land base as per usual. The deck runs playsets of Inspiring Vantage and Needle Spires as non-basics. Pretty simple since those are the premier red-white lands in Standard. Needle Spires is actually a creature more often than you think, threatening to whack your opponent for double strike damage, and it dodges sorcery speed removal really well. Inspiring Vantage, much like the fast lands of old, gets you quick mana fixing early game, no reason to say no to that. Add in 10 plains and 6 mountains and you have the 24 land mana base. Now, white-red vehicles can be taken in a few different directions. Some versions go incredibly aggressive and some don't. This version, while being able to put the pressure on early game, has far more reach than the average aggressive deck. Now, I know vehicles aren't creatures, but for the purposes of this deck tech, we're going to lump them in. Beginning at the bottom of our curve is a playset of Thraben Inspector. Classic good white card. 1 mana for a 1/2 that gives you card advantage down the road. It was good last standard, it's good this standard, plus it crews vehicles like a champion. Always gotta remember there's value in that now. Our other 1-drop is Toolcraft Exemplar, another playset. The Exemplar is incredibly aggressive. Of course, if you don't control an artifact, it's a bit of a bust, but the Inspector makes clues which are artifacts. And there are many more artifacts in the deck that we're going to talk about in a bit. As a matter of fact, there are 15 cards in the deck that are either artifacts or create artifacts, so we're good. Exemplar is a crazy good early play, and when you can attack on turn 2 with a 3/2, you feel really good about it. Moving up to 2 drops, the deck runs a playset of Veteran Motorist, and this is where things start to go off the rails. 2 mana for a 3/1 that lets you scry 2 when it enters the battlefield is already quite nice, to be honest. 1 toughness isn't great, but when it crews a vehicle, it pumps it up. This is another aggressively costed card with aggressive text. Scry 2 is a great way to filter through your deck. 3/1 is nothing to scoff at in combat, and it's nothing to underestimate when this card alone can crew most any vehicle in the game. 3 power, remember? So much synergy, well worth a playset. Next up, clearly the all-star of the deck is a playset of Smuggler's Copter. This card is bonkers. I mean, absolutely unreal. It's already pushed as a 2 mana 3/3 flyer with a loot ability, but crew 1? That's nothing. Your Thraben Inspector crews this, your Exemplar crews it, any creature in the deck crews it basically. It dodges sorcery speed removal like a champion, and while it doesn't have haste so you can't attack right away, you could drop a Veteran Motorist on turn 3, crew with that 4/4 flyer swinging in. Let me be clear. Smuggler's Copter is where you want to be in Standard right now. The card is absurd, totally ridiculous. Turn 1 Exemplar, turn 2 Copter, swing in with the Exemplar, turn 3 swing in with the Copter, loot what you don't need, god, so much value. The last 2-drop in the deck is Selfless Spirit, another playset. This card exists solely to provide protection for your creatures and vehicles when they become creatures. Vehicles already dodge sorcery speed removal like a boss, but with the Copter on everyone's watch list, there's going to be more instant speed removal than ever. Selfless Spirit is the answer to that. It protects everything you have from most kinds of board wipe, instant speed destruction, lots of stuff. 2 mana to give you some insurance and provide a nice creature to crew vehicles. No reason not to play it in a creature-based deck, gotta have some insurance somewhere. Time for the bomb 3 drops. Depala Pilot Exemplar is crazy strong. The deck runs 3 of them. Let's break this down from top to bottom. Other dwarves you control get +1/+1. That's a buff for your Exemplar and Motorist, bringing both of them out of Liliana range. That is nothing to ignore right there. Each vehicle you control gets +1/+1 as long as it's a creature. Copter becomes a 4/4 without any work. That's all I need to see to know this is crazy strong. We'll see more vehicles in a second as well to help support this craziness, and she even has another ability. Whenever she becomes tapped, so when she's attacking or crewing a vehicle, you get to dig in your deck for all dwarf and vehicle cards and put them into your hand. Think about that. All of them. You don't even have to choose. That's crazy. Your deck is running 30 creatures and vehicles. You're going to see something with Depala. Her abilities are all relevant, all powerful, and this deck is perfect for her. Clearly made for this strategy. Can't talk enough about how great this card is. The only other 3-drop in the deck is Pia Nalaar 2 of. This was a creature I was skeptical about at first, but after getting to play with it a little bit, color me impressed. 3 mana for a 2/2 and a 1/1 flyer isn't bad. The artifact turns on the Exemplar, which is nice, but the abilities are what really get me. They aren't so degenerative that they demand instant removal for Pia, but they're impactful enough that they could turn the tide of a game, sometimes without your opponent even knowing it. I won't lie, in testing, opponents kept removal back for when I crewed a vehicle rather than use it on Pia. It's very interesting. She provides buffs to vehicles or her own Copter, and she can sacrifice clues or set Copter to prevent blocking, letting her more aggressive creatures get in for some real damage. This card is not to be underestimated. She's better than she looks. Time for more vehicles. Wouldn't be a vehicle deck without at least a few more, right? The deck runs 3 Fleetwheel Cruiser. This thing's brutal. 5/3 with trample and haste, and it basically crews itself for a turn, which means you can immediately beat in for 5 damage. Trample means that it'll likely get some damage through. This is great for providing immediate board pressure and assassinating planeswalkers you really don't want to deal with. Walker staying on the board against an aggressive deck like this isn't good at all. The cruiser demolishes them as a 5-power creature with trample and is difficult to stop, especially when you have cards like Depala and the Motorist backing them up. Huge nightmare. Also, Crew 2 is disturbingly easy to trigger, since every single creature in your deck can do it besides the Thraben Inspector and Pia's Copter. So don't worry about activations, card's strong. The last vehicle in the deck is the biggest of all, Skysovereign, Consul, Flagship, a pair of them. This is where the deck really comes together and you see what it's trying to do. While a large portion of the strategy is purely aggressive, there are contingencies for a mid-range type of game. The Skysovereign is designed to decimate opposing aggressive strategies with its Inferno Titan-like ability. You land this against the Mirror or another aggressive shell, chances are your opponent won't have anything nearly big enough to deal with it. Best part? Crew 3 is a joke. The Motorist can do it by itself. It won't be as big of a problem as you think, but even if it is, this is the kind of card you need in an aggressive matchup to really turn the tide for you and give you reach into the mid-game. With all that said and done, there are only 6 cards left in the deck. 4 Declaration in Stone and 2 Harness Lightning. Now, this deck is so focused on creating a solid board presence and just running over the opponent with quality creatures, removal is kept at a minimum. Of course, that doesn't mean it isn't effective. Declaration is going to hit basically anything you want it to. It's your answer to the Gearhulks, anyone still running Octopus shenanigans, you get it. Sometimes your vehicles just aren't going to be big enough. Declaration in Stone has your back. Harness Lightning isn't Lightning Bolt, but it's still instant speed removal at 2 mana for 3 damage. You aren't looking to take advantage of any kind of energy ridiculousness, but the card is still great on its own. Another answer to other aggressive strategies, pretty easy include, to be honest. Alright, so White-Red Vehicles is a deck designed to rush out of the gate quickly. Turn 1 Inspector or Exemplar, turn 2 Copter ideally. After that, it's just loot heaven and running over your opponent with your pumped up vehicles and value/synergy-ridden cards. Think about it. The Motorist gives you combat advantage, Depala gives you combat advantage, the Exemplar gets buffed by artifacts, which are rampant in your deck, Pia can manipulate combat, and your vehicles are absolute monsters that just run over anything similarly costed. This has all the fixings to be an aggressive strategy, but because your creatures are so strong and your synergies are so powerful, it reaches into a powerful mid-range deck as well, especially with the lack of efficient board wipes and solid removal plans in an early standard environment. As shown this past weekend, deck's strong. If we're looking at the sideboard, things are going to change really quickly these first few weeks. New standard is always volatile like that. However, with the emergence of the Copter as being particularly bothersome, Fragmentize is a beautiful answer. Cheap, efficient, almost a catch-all for artifacts and enchantments you don't like. Great inclusion in your board. Also, Weaver of Lightning, Selfless Spirit, Rattlechain, Spell Queller, these cards still exist. The Weaver burns them to the ground, especially when you also board in your Galvanic Bombardments. So much value. Great card to have a few of. Besides that, it's really up to how your meta evolves on its own. There was one thing I want to mention, the price of the deck. On paper, this is going to cost you less than $250, which actually isn't bad for a standard deck. The problem is that 25% of that cost is from Smuggler's Copter alone. I know a lot of you are going to ask if there are budget alternatives to the card, and I really want to say there are, but there aren't. The Copter isn't meant to be a filler card in the deck. It's pushed for standard in a ridiculous way. There's no other card that can do what the Copter can do. Some might try to replace it with whatever they think is budget, and that's totally fine, but don't expect the deck to perform nearly as well. The Copter is a centerpiece, and losing it is detrimental to the deck's consistency and success. I wish it weren't true, but we're looking at possibly the best card in standard right now. Yeah, that's where we are. So what do you think? Is White-Red Vehicles a deck that you would want to play? Are you going to pick up a version of it for upcoming standard tournaments? Sure, the format's new, but man, this deck looks sweet. Lots of synergies, plays a good fair game of Magic. I'm definitely a fan. Let me know in the comments what you think, and also let me know which strategies you'd like us to explore next. We're doing some of these metagame deck techs, but we have a lot more coming, so be sure to let me know what you want. As always, be sure to subscribe for the latest and most reliable Magic the Gathering information you could ever need. This is the Mana Source. I'm Wedge. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. This video is brought to you in part by TCGplayer.com. Sure, the Copter is expensive, but White-Red Vehicles is a crazy fun deck. It's great. If you want to start building it, most of the pieces are incredibly reasonable price-wise. Did you know Declaration in Stone is tanked to only $4 each? Yeah, one of the premier removal spells in Standard is only $4. Seems like a great time to get in on that. Don't need removal for the deck. Check out Depala, Pilot Exemplar, a cool $2 each. Great way to start building your way to vehicles. Click the links if you want either of these cheap cards, supports the channel, and Speed Racer gets one step closer to being a reality. Enjoy.